Welcome back to Freedom Algo. Today was a high volatility day. So let's just take a look and get right into it. So you can see we did have this large range. I did lower it down eventually to these lows when we started to come down further, but earlier I had it a little bit higher. Now it does look like we're breaking down here. So it is possible that the range actually was kind of like near these sort of lows. And then you could do a measured move, which would give us a target of where it might actually go now that we're breaking out of it. So hard to say for sure on that one, but I'll leave it down there just so that we can take a look. So anyway, let's take a look over here. First thing this morning was we had this up channel, and it was sort of double up channel working here. So we had an up channel break, new high, but this is kind of a wider channel. So when we got this break and new high, at this point I was thinking we're probably going to reverse. And what you actually get is a first entry, second entry long that fails and gives you this sort of lower high. There's a lower high here as well, but I just think it's moved too far for that one. So some people might argue that you could take this lower high after this move, but I think that you're better off to wait. And to me, this is like it's kind of like a visual second entry short, even though it's not by the counts because this is a new low. It's kind of like a visual two legs. So I saw that as the better trade right there. And I marked it green, but to be honest with you, that one is debatable. It could have been a red because it was pretty safe. It then breaks down. We kind of have, I drew this wider channel as a possibility. We get a close outside here. And to me, what this actually is, let me zoom in a bit. Might be too small. What this actually is I saw this as a first entry, second entry short. Technically, there's a first entry, second entry, third entry short right there. But the reason I looked at this as kind of all part of one move. Like this isn't really a leg. This is kind of sideways, and this bar is inside this green bar. So to me, I didn't really count this. I just kind of looked at this as actually the two legs are right there with a really bearish bar. And it was a close outside of this channel, and we're expecting a new low after that. So that's a really nice move. Definitely get a really nice trade out of that one. Runs down, comes all the way down to here, and we kind of double bottom there. And then we get a higher low here. So I like that one because you did reach the measured moves. And I had a couple measured moves. I had this leg, which then measured down there. And then later, this was a bigger leg that I measured. So that's why that's there. But this was an exact measured move target that we end up pretty much hitting, and then you get a higher low there. So if you took that, that's pretty decent. It's kind of like a visual two legs with a higher low. So then, and a really bullish bar. So that one was decent. It then runs up all the way up here. We get this closeout, or we get this possible channel working, and there's a second entry long right off the channel. That's a really solid one. It takes you all the way up to a new high. So that's a nice one. I took this one in real time. I forget exactly where my take profit was. I think I took profit like right around here, something like that, because I was thinking that we might just kind of peter out and turn into a range there. So, but anyway, that was a decent one. And then it comes over here, and this is a new high right here. So you actually have a first entry, second entry long again. And at this point, you're basically getting like a triple test off of that lows of that possible range that's working. And you're just looking for the range highs here. You are still expecting after the close out of the channel that you will get a new high. And it's possible this channel was a little wider. So you are looking for a new high still there, in my opinion. So it then comes up. You get this move here, which is just a basically like a failed breakout of the range. So and it's a close outside a new high all at once. A lower high would have been better, but you just aren't always going to get those. So you sometimes just got to take what you can get. And that's a really bearish bar. It's probably going to fail on that breakout. You're far from the EMA. So if you took that, that's a place where you might want to take the risk because it is the playing out of this here. You do have a close outside. You get this first leg, and that's the second leg. So the uptrend is played out there. Now, following this, it does come over. And the way I looked at this one was basically just a triple test off of this high here, or off this line. It's lower than this high. It's a triple test. It's a really bearish bar. There is sort of an upward bias there, but there is a range in play, and you're looking for the lows here. So I think that's a reasonable one if you took a short there. That one is arguable if it's red or green. I'd say red because it's a triple test, and these highs are pretty consistent. But, I could see why some people would argue that it's a little bit risky there just because the upward bias. But I don't really see that as a real channel. Okay, so then it turns into this down channel. We finally get a close outside over here. It's not really an entry here, unfortunately. I was trying to see if maybe we'd get a second entry short, but it just doesn't really set up properly because you get this inside bar here. Because this was a really bearish looking bar. If it broke below that, I would have considered this kind of like a double bottom and then a first entry, second entry short off the EMA, but it just didn't set up properly. You got this inside bar and then it became a second entry short, and I just don't like those because it becomes too risky. So then it comes down, and off of this, you have a first entry short, second entry short right there. And that's pretty much perfect price action. Up channel, close outside, a move to a new high, and it's at 2 legs. That's pretty good one. And there's still downward bias there. It then comes down, and you actually get a first entry, second entry long right here on a failed breakout. It's green because it's breaking lower than the others. But then there is a higher low here after the second entry long. I think that's relatively safe. The only reason I marked it green is because, again, it's starting to look like there's still this kind of downward bias. You're below the EMA. It's looking like there's some bearish momentum overall. So you're kind of taking a risk there, even though it is a higher low confirmation setup. It does work, but you can see that it only works temporarily. It fails and then goes up again. So it's just there's a lot of volatility in there. You got to be careful. We get this up channel. This is a close outside and a new high all at once. It's a green because it's debatable of if this is really a convincing close outside. And it did break higher than the top of where I would think that it was going to go. I don't like the lower high because it's moved too far at that point, even though it worked. Some people might argue, maybe I'll just mark it. I think this is risky because it's moved too far already before it came back. But you could argue that there's a triple test there, so I'll mark it green. It breaks down. I don't really see any good trades in there until down here. And this one is just a hidden second entry short. So that's all that is near the EMA. And it's basically, going down. But there is this sort of up channel working. So it's hard to say for sure. I'd say that's like a hidden second entry short. Not perfect. It's not a convincing close outside or anything, but it's there. And then there is a first entry, second entry long. That's also a higher low from down here. So there is a possibility. Now, you don't know for sure if this up channel is going to be really in effect. But what I was looking at this as is like possibly the failed breakout of the lows here. So if you took that, it's reasonable. It's also this measured move, and it's a higher low after we achieved this bigger measured move. And the measured move, you can see, is this leg and then that leg. So if you took that, there's reasons to like that higher low right there. That's also a second entry long. And so I think that that's a reasonable one. All right, so then coming up over here, we then have this move here, which is just, to me, this is a visual second entry long. If you ignore some of this like choppy price action right here, it's basically a move down, basically like one leg up, pull back, second leg up, second entry long. There's also a triple test here, but it does break lower, so it's a little bit riskier. And that one ends up working, but then it turns into this tight down channel, and I honestly don't see a lot of trade entries here. This is one of those strong trends, though. Sometimes in a strong trend, you can take signal bars that pull back, but you're running the risk when you start going into all these lows, so I just don't think that you can enter very many of those. When it does break out over here and turn into this channel, which I didn't draw because I was done for the day, basically, you could kind of start to see this as more of like a spike in channel, possibly setting up. Yeah, it doesn't really fit very well. Maybe like that, I guess. You could argue, right? I'd say you could argue that because it was a strong trend, there might be some possibilities in here. They're not perfect, but like, if you knew what was going on here after the spike in channel, that's a first entry, second entry short. If you took a low risk trade there, that possibly works. And there's a couple of signal bars in there that you could argue for, but like, again, you're shorting into the lows. And so I'd say like this one is a decent one for a pullback to the key entry point. I'd say this one is decent if you were going to short on a pullback, that sort of thing. So there's a couple of decent first entries there that are okay, I guess, but not perfect by any means. Sometimes when the momentum is like that, though, you can take those. It breaks out, makes the new low, and now it looks like we're trying to find some level of correction here after that wild movement. But that's all I saw for the day. It was a really good day, and it looked like the volatility was here. So Still having a lot of volatility. I was going for 8 tick scalps today instead of 4 or 6 because the volatility was so high, and I was entering a lot of these on limit orders, letting it break lower, then dropping my limit order a little bit back, and that was kind of protecting my positions a bit too. If you entered on stop orders today, you'd probably want to go for even larger targets sometimes because your stop loss is going to be larger. So you just got to keep that in mind. But I'll be back to do it tomorrow, and I'll see you then.